Chapter 62. Lev. The detonators are hidden in a sock in the back of his cubby. Anyone who finds them will think they're Band-Aids. He tries not to think about it. It's Blaine's job to think about it, and to tell him when it's time. Today, Lev's unit of tithes are taking a nature walk to commune with creation. The pastor who leads them is one of the more self-important ones. He speaks as if every word out of his mouth were a pearl of wisdom, pausing after each thought as if he expects someone to write it down. He leads them to an odd winter bare tree. Lev, who is used to winters with ice and snow, finds it odd that trees in Arizona still lose their leaves. This tree has a multitude of branches that don't quite match, each with different bark and different texture. "I wanted you to see this," the pastor says to the crew. "It's not much to see now, but oh, you should see it in the spring. Over the years, many of us have grafted branches from our favorite trees to the trunks." He points to the various limbs. This branch sprouts pink cherry blossoms, and this one fills with huge sycamore leaves. This one fills with purple jarkania flowers, and this one grows heavy with peaches. The tithes examine it, touching its branches cautiously, as if it might at any moment turn into the burning bush. "What kind of tree was it to begin with?" asks one of the tithes. The pastor can't answer him. "I'm not sure, but it really doesn't matter. What matters is what it's become. We call it our little tree of life. Isn't it wonderful?" "There's nothing wonderful about it." The words are out of Lev's mouth before he realizes he's spoken them, like a sudden, unexpected belch. All eyes turn toward him. He quickly covers. "It's the work of man, and we shouldn't be prideful," he says. "When pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with humility comes wisdom." "Yes," says the pastor. "Proverbs 11, isn't it?" "Proverbs 11:2. "Very good." He appears suitably humbled. "Well, it is pretty in the spring." Their path back to the tithing house takes them by fields and courts where the terribles are being observed and brought to the best possible physical condition before their unwinding. The tithes endure the occasional jeers and hisses from the terribles, like martyrs. It's as they pass one of the dormitories that Lev finds himself face to face with someone he never expected to see again. He finds himself standing in front of Connor. Each was headed in a different direction. Each sees the other at the same instant and stops short, staring in absolute shock. "Lev?" Suddenly the pompous pastor is there, grabbing Lev by both shoulders. "Get away from him!" the pastor snarls at Connor. "Haven't you done enough damage already?" Then he spirits Lev away, leaving Connor standing there. "It's all right," says the pastor, his protective grip on Lev's shoulder still firm as they stride away. "We're all aware of who he is and what he did to you. We were hoping you wouldn't find out he was at the same harvest camp. But I promise you, Lev, he will never harm you again." And then he says quietly, "He's being unwound this afternoon." "What? And good riddance, too." It's not unusual to see tithes unsupervised on the grounds of Happy Jack, although they're usually in clusters, or at the very least, groups of two. It's rare to see one hurrying alone, almost running across the fields. Lev hadn't lingered long once he got back to the tithing house. He took the first opportunity to slip out. Now he searches everywhere for Blaine and Mai. Connor's being unwound this afternoon. How could this have happened? How did he get here? Connor was safe at the graveyard. Did the Admiral throw him out? Or did he leave on his own? Either way, Connor must have been caught and brought here. The one thing Lev had taken comfort in, the safety of his friends, has now been torn away. Connor's unwinding must not be allowed, and it is in Lev's power to stop it. He finds Blaine in the grassy commons between the dining hall and the dormitories, being put through a regime of calisthenics with his unit. Blaine does them oddly, putting as little force into them as possible, making all his moves low impact. "I need to talk to you." Blaine looks at him, surprised and furious. "What are you, crazy? What are you doing here?" A staffer sees him and makes a beeline toward them. After all, everyone knows tithes and terribles do not mix. "It's all right," Lev tells the staffer. "I know him from home. I just wanted to say goodbye." The staffer reluctantly nods his approval. "All right, but make it quick." Lev pulls Blaine aside, making sure they're far enough away that nobody can hear. "We're doing it today," Lev tells him. "No more waiting." "Hey," says Blaine, "I decide when we do it. And I say, not yet." The longer we wait, the longer we risk going off by accident. So, randomness works too. He wants to hit Blaine, but he knows if he does, they'll probably leave a crater in the field 50 yards wide. So he tells Blaine the only thing he knows for sure will get him to give in. They know about us, whispers Lev. What? They don't know who it is, but they know there are clappers here. I'm sure they're reviewing the blood tests right now, looking for anything unusual. It won't be long until they find us. Blaine grits his teeth and curses. He thinks for a moment, then starts shaking his head. No, I'm not ready. It doesn't matter if you're ready. You want chaos? Well, it's coming today, whether you want it or not. Because if they find us, what do you think they'll do? Blaine looks even sicker at the prospect. They'll detonate us in the forest. Or out in the desert where no one will ever know. Blaine considers it for a moment more, then takes a deep, shuddering breath. I'll find Mai at lunch and tell her. We'll go at 2 o'clock sharp. Make it 1. Lev rummages through his cubby, getting more and more frantic. Those socks have to be here. They have to be. But he can't find them. The detonators are crucial, but they're cleaner. Lev wants it to be clean. Clean and quick. That's mine. Lev turns to see the town-headed kid with emerald green eyes standing behind him. That's my cubby. Yours is over there. Lev looks around and realizes he's off by 1 bed. There's nothing in the unit to identify 1 bed or 1 cubby from another. If you need socks, I can lend you. No, I have enough of my own, thanks. He takes a deep breath, closes his eyes to get his panic under control, and goes to the right cubby. The sock with the detonators is there. He slips it in his pocket. You okay, Lev? You look kind of funny. I'm fine. I've just been running, that's all. Running on the treadmill. No, you haven't, says the kid. I was just in the gym. Listen, mind your own business, okay? I'm not your buddy. I'm not your friend. But we ought to be friends. No, you don't know me. I'm not like you, okay? So just leave me alone. Then he hears a deeper voice behind him. That's enough, Lev. He turns to see a man in a suit. It's not one of the pastors, but the counselor who admitted him a week ago. This can't be good. The counselor nods to the tow-headed kid. Thank you, Sterling. The boy casts his eyes down and hurries out. We assigned Sterling to keep an eye on you and to make sure you're adjusting. We are, to say the least, concerned. Lev sits in a room with the counselor and 2 pastors. The sock bulges in his pocket. He bounces his knees nervously, then remembers he's not supposed to be making any jarring motions, or he might detonate. He forces himself to stop. You seem troubled, Lev, says the counselor. We'd like to understand why. Lev looks at the clock. It's 12:48. 12 minutes until he, Mai, and Blaine are supposed to meet and take care of business. I'm being tithed, Lev says. Isn't that enough reason? The younger of the 2 pastors lean forward. We try to make sure every tithe enters the divided state in the proper frame of mind. We wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't try to make things right for you, says the elder pastor, then offers a smile so forced it's more like a grimace. Lev wants to scream at them, but he knows that won't get him out of here any faster. I just don't like being around other kids right now, okay? I'd prefer to do this alone. But it's not okay, says the older pastor. That's not the way we do things here. Everyone supports one another. The junior pastor leans forward. You need to give the other boys a chance. They're all good kids. Well, maybe I'm not. Lev can't help but look at the clock again. 12:50. Mai and Blaine will be in place in 10 minutes, and if he's still there, and what if he's still here in this stinking office? Won't that just be great? Have you somewhere to be? The counselor asks. You keep checking the time. Lev knows his answer needs to make sense, or they will truly become suspicious of him. I heard the kid who kidnapped me was being unwound today. I was just wondering if it had happened yet. The pastors look at one another and at the counselor, who leans back in his chair as calm as can be. If he hasn't been, then he will be shortly. Lev, I think it would be healthy for you to discuss what happened to you while you were being held hostage. I'm sure it was horrible, but talking about it can take away the power of the memory. I'd like to hold a special group tonight with your unit. It will be the same time for you to share with others what you've been holding inside. I think you'll find they'll be very understanding. Tonight, says Lev. Okay, fine. I'll talk about everything tonight. Maybe you're right, and it will make me feel better. We just want to ease your mind, says one of the pastors. So, can I go now? The counselor studies him for a moment more. You seem so tense. I'd like to talk you through some guided relaxation exercises.